Good morning. My name is Sam, and today I would like to bend your ear about faith and justice. Not just the Christian faith. Every faith practiced across cultures around the world addresses the concept of justice in some way or form. In the past 2 weeks, the Jewish community celebrated Passover. Christians celebrated Easter. Just yesterday, Malayali Hindus celebrated Vishu, which is the start of the new year in the Malayali calendar, and Muslims will celebrate Eid al-Fitr next week. Relax, folks. There won't be a quiz, I promise. You don't have to remember any of that. The last time I was here, though, I introduced myself as a poet, an activist, and an anti-discrimination educator. Today, I would like to further that introduction by telling you that I am Indian and queer. I was also raised Hindu on my mom's side, Muslim on my dad's side, and I went to a Christian school. Yes, I'm okay. Thank you for asking. Like most families, my families too had different ways of teaching. My grandmother on my mom's side was all about teaching Hinduism through bedtime stories. My family on my dad's side relied strongly on the power of control. And school was all about Bible stories through choir and plays. But despite all the good things that could have come from a tri-religious upbringing, family dynamics got in the way. We all know how that is. So soon for me, religion was just another thing to run away from. Except for the fact that I liked the stories. Always such great storytelling. And an intuition that I think we all have as kids but lose as adults. That intuition that tells us that there must be something good that comes out of every single story, right? So I turned to resources with fewer conflicts of interest: books, friends, pop culture, and more recently, social media. Without doubt, culture after culture uses faith to help direct us toward a moral compass, to help build a society based on justice, compassion, and kindness. As you saw earlier in Romans chapter 12, verses 4 through 5, we learn, just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members don't have the same function, all of us, in union with Christ, form one body. And as members of that one body, we all belong to each other. As an activist, I read these words and think to myself, if only we could all acknowledge that every single identity we know of is a necessary, significant part of not only the larger body of humanity, but also our greater collective consciousness. Perhaps our race and ethnicity form our eyes to give us unique perspective. Perhaps our gender is our mind, so who we are here is who we are, period. Our torso is the strength of all our faith traditions standing together, standing up for what is right. And our hearts are where our children live, the ones we raise and the ones we used to be. Without one, there is no other. And just like a hand cannot do the work of a leg, every person in their true, authentic self adds value to our identity and our society. And there it is, that moral compass. This Ramadan, I learned that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon his soul, said, "Your smile for your sibling is a charity. Your removal of stones, thorns, or bones from the paths of people is a charity. Your guidance of a person who is lost is a charity." When we think of charity or generosity, typically, we think of what extra we have to give, what's left over once we are done with our own individual comforts. We also usually think of charity as what is tangible, right? Money, clothes, food, supplies. Rarely do we think of acts of kindness the same way. rarely do we think of our role and responsibility in ending systemic injustice as generosity rooted in charity. An ear, maybe, to hear what a hard day a stranger who crossed your path had. Maybe a gentle word to someone asking for help at the traffic light instead of a raised window. All examples of things we don't necessarily think of as charity. But imagine if we could give both. What's extra, the tangibles, and what we can always muster up in spades, kindness and compassion. There's that moral compass again. After I moved to the States, I thought of my grandmother often. She passed the year before I moved here. All those bedtime stories, you know, they really come to fruition when you move to a country 9,000 miles away from your family to a tundra zone named Michigan, because that's where I first landed. It was in my first year here that I watched this Tamil movie called Anbe Sivam. Anbu meaning love in Tamil, and Sivam meaning God. Aside from being the title of the movie, the concept of Anbe Sivam is very common in Hindu philosophies. It's fundamental almost. Originally, it was debated by religious scholars as the way to God is love, right? So Anbe Sivam, love and God, the way to God is love. And then the term was gradually reconceptualized to become God is love, not the way to God is love, but God themselves is love. Meaning, to understand God, you have to understand love. Meaning, when you learn love and when you show love, you know God. As a poet and a human, I am then tempted to interpret that as the more compassion and love we show to each other, the more we will fill our lives, intentionally or unintentionally, with God. There's that moral compass for the third time. Stay with me for just a moment now, okay? Because if all of the above that we are saying is true, then this moral compass, regardless of faith tradition, calls on every single one of us to love and care for everyone, no matter if and how we understand their experiences. This moral compass teaches us not empathy, but compassion. You may say, okay, hold on a second, what is the difference? Well, oftentimes think about how we casually define empathy. We define it as putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Now, this seems like a viable concept, but really it's unrealistic. Let's be honest now. How many of you can imagine what it is like to walk in the shoes of a 39-year-old masculine gay Indian woman who's half Hindu on her mother's side and half Hindu on her father's side, who wears a size 4.5 boys' shoes? Not really realistic, right? My point, exactly. But what you can do is you can believe me when I share my experiences with you. Yes? You can support me on my journey. You can do your part to remove systemic obstacles along the way. And in your interactions, you can be kind in a genuine and authentic way that is also known as compassion. Something that you don't need to know or understand, but you believe and will stand up for regardless. And right there, my friends, right there in that sweet spot between responsibility for others and compassion for others lies our collective moral compass, waiting to guide us through all the hate that currently hurts and all the judgment that lies to us every day, to a world where we will measure our strength by the kindness, the leadership, and the compassion of none other but the children that we raise and the children that we were. Thank you.